Hi everyone, Anthony Cordula here from Crown Group. Here with me today as part of our next instalment on how to maximise your investment whilst minimising your risk is Stephen Brell from Netstrata. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here.
Thank you, mate. Let's get into it in terms of strata. One of the key things our investors generally ask about is strata levies and strata itself and how it all works in a big development. I guess for the benefit of everyone, what is an actual strata?
Sure. Strata or strata title is simply a system or form of property ownership in New South Wales which allows owners to live in a community where they own an apartment or a townhouse or a villa, and they share shared assets, so the common property, things like hallways, lifts, driveways, gardens and that sort of thing. And the system was set up back in the 60s and essentially allows owners to own property in a communal setting, and they're all responsible for those shared facilities and the communal assets of the property.
And when we talk about strata managers, generally there's the conception about a property manager and a strata manager, but particularly in a strata manager's role, what's their day-to-day operation day look
Sure.
like?
Well, the Act of Parliament, which is the Strata Schemes Management Act, which sets out the titling system, it sets out 5 key areas that an owner's corporation or a body corporate has to look after. And they are, an owner's corporation must insure the building, they must maintain the building, they must finance the building, they must administer their bylaws, and they must also keep accurate records for their scheme. So the day-to-day duties of a strata manager really encompasses those 5 areas, with a particular focus on maintaining the building, because that's generally your day-to-day, and the other administrative apparatus make up the rest of your time.
So when we talk about strata levies,
Yes.
How are these levies generally raised? How are they calculated is probably one of the most common questions I get asked too.
Yeah, so the way that levies are raised is essentially at every year an owners corporation has an annual general meeting, and at that meeting the owners will go through their finances for the year to see how they were tracking against their budget, and they'll generally set their levies based on what the maintenance needs are for the building. So they'll look at things like their insurances, cleaning, gardening, water expenses, common electricity expenses and those sorts of things, and they set their levies at their annual budget. As far as how the levies are then passed on to the owners, they're calculated by something called a unit of entitlement. And for lack of a better description, a unit of entitlement is like your shareholding in the scheme.
Yep.
And that unit of entitlement is based on your relative value against other owners in the property. So if your apartment or your lot is worth slightly more than someone else, then you have a slightly higher unit of entitlement. Now, whilst that obligates you to pay more as far as your strata levies, it also gives you greater voting rights at a strata meeting.
You touched on one of the items there about an annual general meeting. As an owner, as an investor, one of the things I think as a key for any investor is how do owners get involved in the owners corporation? How do they get involved so they know where their money is actually going?
Sure. Look, I would encourage all owners. So when you buy into an apartment, you're automatically a member of the owners corporation. And again, every owner is entitled to attend the annual general meeting. And I would encourage all owners to come along, because that is really the administrative hub of what the owners set for the next 12 months for relation for their scheme.
Yep.
And you really do get to understand the inner workings of what's going on. The next level above that, at the annual general meeting, the owners will elect a strata committee. And the strata committee, again, for lack of a better word, act like the board of directors of a company. And they assist the strata manager and the building manager and the property managers in administering the strata scheme on behalf of all the owners.
Well, I think for any investor, from our point of view, we always really like to engage our owners to ensure that they are part of the building. And I think from our point of view, having our investors, wanting to have their development looked after is, obviously one of those things where we want to make sure that these developments are part of a community. So let's touch base on the difference between strata managers and property managers. Sure. How important is it to have a good relationship between both?
It's absolutely essential to have a well-maintained and running building, particularly administratively. The relationship between the strata manager and the property manager is absolutely vital. So the strata manager looks after the common areas of the building and those elements that I spoke about earlier, such as the insurance and the maintenance, whereas the property manager is looking after the individual lots. And we work very much in unison with the property managers, making sure that the residents' needs are being maintained, things like the administration of the bylaws, and obviously the facilities at the building are being maintained to a standard which is comfortable for everyone in the scheme. So that relationship between strata manager and property manager is absolutely crucial.
It's funny because, dealing with our property managers, it's a very common thing where the guys are talking to their strata managers on a daily occurrence.
Yes.
And having that relationship where it's a quick email back,
Yep.
or if it's a quick phone call just to get advice on how your apartment is performing, it's really vital for us.
It is. And look, the residents really play a big part in this because, the residents are really the eyes and ears at the building. They're seeing things going on a day-to-day basis. They can report through to the property managers defects in the common property or issues with the common property that need attention. That will get reported through to us as a strata manager, and we can take care of that for them. So having that line of communication and understanding the line of communication is really important.
We talk about bylaws.
Yes.
It's always a common thing.
It's a fun topic.
It is a fun topic. And I guess the biggest thing for us is owners, sometimes they question what are bylaws and the rules and regulations, but what are some of the basic bylaws that,
Sure.
for a resident that needs to be in an apartment?
Absolutely. Well, look, as the name implies, the bylaws are simply the rules of the building. And they're general in nature. So things like, you can't make too much noise, which is going to upset your neighbour. You can't park on common property or park in other people's spaces, as an example. You can't go unnecessarily damaging the common property without the permission of the owners' corporation. So things that really just govern the owner's behaviour or the resident's behaviour in the scheme. I'm just hitting on the behavioural bylaws at the moment. There are many more, which, things such as keeping of animals is a big one. Is the building a pet-friendly building? And if it is, what are the parameters surrounding what type of animals may be kept in the building?
I'm going to finish off with one of the most difficult questions, so
Sure.
I hate to put you on the hot spot here.
That's all right.
Strata maintenance.
Yes.
And the conception I always get from our team that always are talking to our clients talks about, well, what's covered under strata in terms of the repairs and maintenance, and what's covered under the landlord's responsibility. What's the best way to summarise that?
Sure, I'll do my best. So an owner's corporation's records or finances are really split into two funds, and they're called the Administrative Fund and the Capital Works Fund. I'll work on the Capital Works Fund first because that's easier. The Capital Works Fund is intended for long-term maintenance. It's really like your savings account, if you like, for the owners. And that looks after capital repairs, so things like replacement of carpet, repainting of the building, any major sort of refurbishments in the building in the future. So, for example, a lift upgrade or that sort of thing. And again, as I said, that's really your savings account. The administration fund is intended for the day-to-day running costs of the scheme. So things like your insurance costs, cleaning costs, our strata fees, other administrative fees, and so forth. Now, as far as what's covered from your lot to the common property, it is really as simple as anything on the boundary of the apartment, the ceiling and the floor, anything outside that is the common property. So if there are things going on in the common areas that need attention, the owner's corporation pays for that. If there are things or maintenance needs that are occurring inside the apartment, so things like, as an example, a leaking tap washer in the kitchen, that would fall under the landlord or the owner's responsibility to repair and maintain. It's all probably important for me here to mention insurance is a big thing. So many of the elements inside the lot or inside your apartment are actually protected by the owner's corporation's building insurance. So things like your internal walls, internal doors, kitchen cabinets, bathroom cabinets, showers, toilets, all of those sorts of things, they are all the lot owner's responsibility for repairs and maintenance. However, they are protected by the owner's corporation's insurance. So if an owner had a fire in their apartment and the apartment was partly damaged, the strata insurers would come in and they would pay for that replacement cost of any damaged items. There are a couple of exclusions there. So your carpet on your floor is generally not covered and the paint on your wall is generally not covered. But again, most owner investors and landlords should be taking out some type of contents insurance to protect those items on their behalf.
Yeah, and definitely in one of our previous episodes that we had landlord's insurance and how important it is for our clients. So you can see the benefits from our part of trying to make sure that we are minimising our investors' risks, and obviously having those answers where it clears up a lot of those things too.
Absolutely.
And I guess the one of the things that you're talking about, when you're talking about the administration fund and the capital works fund, as an owner, you'll see it actually on your strata levy invoices where you have a separation of two line items, one being a capital works and one being an admin. So at least that way it gives a lot of clients a good understanding of...
It does, yeah. Look, the capital works fund that we have in New South Wales, I won't say it's unique, but it's rare. It's rarely used throughout the world. Most, let's say, common ownership schemes in the world actually have the owners paying for things as they go.
Yep.
Whereas in New South Wales, we like to be a little bit more forward thinking, and we like to have that savings account where we're actually putting money away each year, year after year, so it builds up. So then when we have the need, we have the monies available. So it's a subtle difference, particularly for overseas investors that don't quite understand what a capital works fund is. It's really basically just a savings account for the owners.
Well, mate, on that note, I think we've covered a fair bit of information,
No
and I really appreciate your time. And
That's
to
right.
all our investors, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of dealing with Strata and what is Strata. And until next time, Stephen, thanks so much for
No
joining
worries.
us.
Anthony,
and,
thank you very much for the invite.
And we look forward to catch up with you again.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.